Hi, it's Laura at Equinox18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is my September 2021 recap video where I share what I've been up to, including divination, reading, animal learning, etc. I have a format, and I'll timestamp below based on that format as I always do. Starting with just some general life updates. September has been a whirlwind of a month that has been quite stressful, if I'm honest. Folks know that I work in education, so it was back to school time for me, and it was the first time that I have been in a classroom for a year and a half. So it's a big adjustment being back into in-person teaching after teaching online for a full year. My largest class this semester is about 80, and it's also the first time that I've been in a room of that many people or been in places with this many people for a year and a half. So it's been a big kind of psychological shift, a big emotional shift, as well as all the kind of logistics involved in figuring out how to teach well in the current context and with the current safety protocols and all of that are, of course, still with us. I didn't know for sure, even in August, I didn't really know for sure whether we would be in person or whether we would be online based on kind of where the messaging we were getting was compared to the provincial rules, particularly provincial rules around needing to have people 2 meters apart, which obviously impacts room capacities and all kinds of things. So we really weren't sure if we were definitely going back in person or to what extent until fairly close to the beginning of classes, which meant kind of making multiple syllabus plans, a lot of work. But now we're a couple of weeks in and I think things are going well. I'm starting to find my rhythm, but it feels new and strange still. And it has been anxiety inducing adjustment to be back out in the world again in that way and be doing my work again in that way. But I'm hopeful that the semester will go well. That's really where my mind has been focused the whole month, predominantly. I also had this past month, it's still September when I'm filming this, I did also have my first holiday, Alban Elephant, or the autumn equinox, since I made Druidry a part of my practice in a formal way, through the AODA specifically. And so that was a really potent and wonderful experience. The AODA is not particular or strict about how folks acknowledge holidays, but it does ask that new members for the year celebrate a cycle of Druid holidays, which for them are the solstices and equinoxes, which I've always observed in my own way anyway. So I'd been deciding whether to, go with more like their template or go with something more DIY as I would usually go. And I landed kind of in the middle, but mostly with going with an AODA approach, which we receive in our candidate handbook. If folks are interested in that, I will happily make a video talking about celebrating the autumn equinox with a Druid ritual. I plan to make that video, so I'd hoped it would be out sooner, but it's such a busy time. But I had a really nice ritual and did some journaling and some divination in that context and had a really nice day, had a campfire outside, observed the moon, magical day, which was really great. I also, this month, finally completed, I've been formally enrolled for like an embarrassingly long time, but I finally completed Kim at Abundant Life Tarot's course on choosing your next tarot deck and curating your tarot deck collection. I had been following the videos on YouTube and watching them And I had also enrolled in the course, but I hadn't been going into the course and kind of clicking through that I'd actually watched the YouTube videos, and not all of the videos from the course are on YouTube. So I went through the course and actually completed everything and made sure I completed everything in order. So I have officially graduated from a Abundant Life Tarot Academy course in curating your deck collection. It was a really, really great course. I will put the link below. There's so much great food for thought built into this course. There are tarot spreads, there are journaling prompts, and it really, I think, pressed me to articulate some things about how I think about deck collecting that, you know, not so much that I wasn't sure how I felt about, but that I hadn't really put into words in the way that the course asks you to do. So I found that to be really productive and helpful and enjoyable to go through. And I have always had a tarot and oracle divination tool collection list, but as I went through that course, I also really tightened up my spreadsheet. I made sure that it was up to date. And so now I, you know, for the first time in quite a long time, I actually know 100% exactly what I have in my collection. I took everything off the shelves and, you know, made sure that I had all the information down in my spreadsheet of, you know, where I had bought a particular deck. Some of them I don't know because I bought them in stores and stuff, but most of them I could look back, you know, if I bought them online, into my records and fill in that information. Very good for insurance purposes. And so I'm really glad to have that and enjoyed having that visual representation of my collection saved as well. So those are some highlights for the month of September. Shifting from there into decks that I have worked with the most this month. The deck that I've actually worked with the most this month, and now I'm looking around for it, like, where did I put it? I put it right in front of me, is my Celtic Tree Oracle, which is a Ogham deck. This is a deck that's been around for quite a number of years now. I'm really enjoying learning Ogham with this deck, and the fact that it has the FID, the Irish name on there, the plant or tree that is associated with each Ogham. And so this is the one I've been working with the most. I have done some tarot readings for myself, for sure, and included oracle decks in that, but this is the deck, since I've been studying Ogham, that I have been working with the most. I did not actually purchase any decks this month. I did, however, purchase a set of Ogham staves, and I'll put a link below to the exact set that I purchased because there are quite a lot around. So these are Ogham staves with the FID, one on each, and for these they are each on a twig from the tree that the Ogham represents. So like this is Dar, and this is on oak because that's the tree that this Ogham is associated with. Strafe is associated with blackthorn, so this is a piece of blackthorn, and so on. They feel really good in the hands, and I'm still learning, and I have a cheat sheet that I made for myself that's a spreadsheet of the Ogham, its name, the tree, and my little brief wording for a meaning that I've been using as I work with these, but these are fantastic. They came in a little pink bag that I feel does not suit them at all, but I will find a use for, and I'll find something else to keep them in. But this is the one divination tool that I bought in September. I did receive 2 decks this month though, but they are decks that I had pre-ordered One was a pre-order, one was a Kickstarter, quite some months ago now. Yeah, not particularly recent purchases, either one, but they both came this month. One of them, in fact, just came. Like, it is still in order and everything. I haven't used it. I've taken it out and had a peek, but that's it. So the first, get organized here. The first deck that I received is the Queer Lenormand by Mariana Andrade, and this was a Kickstarter deck. And the back of the box reads that the Queer Lenormand deck is a modern design with a colorful artwork by queer artist Mariana Andrade, developed with extra cards to represent all within the LGBTQIA+ community, with a diversity of race and gender identities. This 54-card deck comes with a guidebook and includes different person, drag king, drag queen cards, child, man, and woman cards for personalized readings. So I'm really happy to have this. I've made a video previously, which I'll post below, a link to, about trying to make Lenormand as a system more to us LGBTQIA+ inclusive, and some of the barriers that are kind of built into the system and ways that we can, you know, as readers and as deck creators, try to smash those barriers. And so I was really keen to hear about this project. The creator actually contacted me and asked me, you know, what I thought of it and for some feedback. So I chatted with her, and that was great. The deck came with a little thank you note. This is not a walkthrough, so I'm not going to show the whole deck. If folks would be interested in a walkthrough from me to hear my thoughts, I'd be happy to give it. But it has a rainbow back on the cards, and they're really colorful. I would say kind of like a pop art style artwork. And what is, you know, particularly special about this deck is how many extra cards are here in terms of increasing the representation and diversity in the deck. So as mentioned, we have multiple child cards included here, and we have many different man cards. There are 5 of them. There. And there are 5 different woman cards. And then Mariana has also included person cards as well, so another 5. There are so many significators in this deck, and for folks who don't know Lenormand, you read with a significator usually to represent the queer and to represent someone or someone's significant in their life. So these are all person. And so diversity in the Lenormand deck has kind of an added importance, I think, because there is this direct representation of the querent by a card in ways that for a lot of folks who read tarot is not the case. So we also have drag queen and drag king cards as significators as well. And I think that that's just great. I have not read with this deck yet. I'm not a super proficient Lenormand reader. I would very much say that I'm a beginner, and because I've been focused on learning Ogham, I haven't gone back and done much Lenormand reading this month. I haven't done any Lenormand reading this month, but I've been enjoying looking at this deck very much. So I was glad to receive that after some, you know, long awaiting after the Kickstarter. The second deck that I received, I just received 2 days ago. And I pre-ordered this months ago, and I'm so happy to have it arrived. And that is the Afro Tarot 2 by Jessie Jumanji. So Jessie Jumanji had the Afro Tarot, and I think still the Afro Tarot is available as well. But when I saw the Afro Tarot 2 come out for pre-order, I was very excited to order this version. I've never had the Afro Tarot. I admired it and found it beautiful, but I hadn't added it to my collection. But when I saw that this one was going to have a detailed guidebook, I was right in for it. And so as part of the pre-order, there is a hard copy guidebook. There is a downloadable guidebook that comes with the deck, but for the pre-orders you also got this this hard copy, and also got a print. So here's a beautiful print. Really amazing. I want to put it so that it stays flat. Okay. And so the guidebook is full color and has descriptions of each card, keywords for upright and reversed, messages for different areas of life. So a message for spirit or self, a message for home, a message for relationships, a message for career, finances. Each one has some reflection questions. There are different African proverbs for each card. Some of them are listed as African proverb, and then some of them are more specific, like Ethiopian proverb, Swahili proverb, etc. And there is also, that came with the deck, all of the photo credits for the collage work. I could talk about the beauty of this deck, and I have not even opened the box to show anything yet. So the little pamphlet with some keywords, not with keywords, the keywords are in the book. There's a little pamphlet that has the photo credits. Really, really beautiful. And the front of the pamphlet just says, "The Afro Tarot 2 is the sequel to the original Afro Tarot by Jesse Jumanji. Illustrated in their signature futuristic collage style, modern-day African people are represented as the main characters of the tarot, combining the traditional Rider-Waite iconography with an African ancestral essence. Each card is carefully curated for optimum intuitive and spiritual alignment. Each card in this deck consists of a combination of images digitally collaged by Jesse Jumanji." And it goes on how to access the PDF guidebook. So I'll just show maybe a few cards here again. They're still in order. I've gone through it several times. It has amazing sparkly gilding. I don't have any decks that have this kind of sparkly. And this is the back. So there's definitely a similar what is the word for this? Similar aesthetic, I guess, between Afro Tarot 1 and Afro Tarot 2. The fonts are different. The images are all different. And the Afro Tarot original has a bit more of a border. They are both collage decks, and they are both beautiful. Really, really beautiful deck, colorful, and a great guidebook. So I'm really excited to work with this beautiful deck. And those are the two decks that I received this month. Trying to arrange everything so that it doesn't slide away. Okay. Books. Books I've read in September. I read 11 books in September. I don't know how. considering how busy it's been. Part of it, I think, is that I finished August with a lot of half-finished books, so I ended up with a higher number in September of books that I finished. And the first book that I read that I'll mention as a tarot book was that I read from cover to cover the Landback Tarot and Oracle of Colonization Guidebook by Krista Flute. And this is a Kickstarter deck which I backed. And I knew that I wanted to read the guidebook in order, front to back at least once, while getting to know the deck. And you can probably tell that I really appreciate this guidebook by all of the flags that I stuck in there. Really, really incredible guidebook. And just so many interesting, innovative takes on tarot cards in here. I thought I would share just one, though, as the posted flags suggest, there are so many that I want to think more about. And that's my favorite, my favorite minor arcana card in the deck. Like in the tarot deck in general, not in this deck specifically, but just my favorite minor arcana in tarot, in Smith-Waite tarot, which is the Six of Swords, which in this deck is the Six of Weapons. This is the back, birch bark on the back. And the Six of Weapons in this deck depicts yearly flood evacuations from Saskatchewan Nation, which is a Cree community in Northern Ontario. And so this card, is one that I've been sitting with and thinking on because, the Six of Swords is a minor arcana that I love. And this take on it is one that is prompting a lot of reflection. And I'll just read a little bit from the guidebook, where Krista writes, "Some weapons are invisible, such as floods from the climate crisis and the solutions of our oppressors. Take their shelter now and then regroup. Recognize and validate your resolve, fortitude, and concerns. This isn't the solution, but it will provide an opportunity to build one." In this picture, we are looking out a plain window at flooded Saskatchewan. The now yearly floods on their lands from environmental destruction caused by our colonizers is so devastating that the entire community must be evacuated nearly every spring. The small fly-in only community is flown out to cities and towns across Ontario. Many evacuees do not speak English, all expected to be grateful for the rescue from those who flooded their village in the first place. And Saskatchewan was, the nation, was, contrary to treaty, forcibly relocated to the place where it's currently located, with the knowledge that that area flooded in the ways that it does. And there have been, as the guidebook explains, repeated evacuations for this reason, as well as evacuations for reasons related to water quality emergencies, including E. coli. And so thinking about this in the context of the Six of Swords, which in the Smith-Waite tarot shows this very self-directed, making a journey from rougher water to calm water, and thinking about the six is numerologically for me associated with harmony, with balance and emotion in the cup suit, and intellect in the sword suit. There's a lot of water in the card though. Thinking about that, and then thinking about this depiction as a literal movement, which is to safety in quotes, from a crisis that is the result of colonialism. And thinking, moving to calmer waters, like in what context, and moving to moving to safety on what terms. And so this is you know, this is just one card in the whole deck, but has been making me kind of think about the Six of Swords in new ways and learn more as well, which I tremendously appreciate. Yeah, really, really incredible. And I will say as well that this guidebook, just in kind of really general tarot deck guidebook terms, this guidebook does exactly what I want a tarot guidebook to do, in the sense of speaking really specifically to the imagery chosen and the interpretations and understandings and intentions of the creator, which I feel like so many decks, you know, don't have a guidebook that does this, or have a guidebook that just has kind of very generic keywords or very generic descriptions that don't really relate directly to the content of the specific deck. And I think that this book does that so well. There are sections at the beginning of each part. It's like a section at the beginning of the majors and then a section at the beginning of each suit that goes through that section as kind of a trajectory, like from 1 to 2 to 3. Those are really standout sections of this book for me. Really, really well done. The spreads are good, and you know, don't feel like a repetition of the same spreads that are in every book, which I also really appreciate. And there are also mentions throughout the book, but on Auntie Kay's website there are links to news stories and information and videos and things like this that relate to the depictions of real places and real people that are in the deck. So I'm going to link to that below the web page with the guidebook links in it. And then even if you don't have the guidebook, even if you missed out on this deck, then you can still read some of the information related to the folks and to the places and pieces of history and contemporary reality that are depicted in the deck. So I'll share that. Amazing read. Amazing. The next book that I will mention, I'll mention the couple of books that are from book clubs that I am in, or that I have been in. I don't have too many books to show because I read on the e-reader, but I do have some that are here in hard copy. So one book that I finished that is a book club book, and this we read in a book club that I helped to co-facilitate at my work. We read On Being Included, Racism and Diversity in Institutional Life by Sarah Ahmed, and this book specifically relates to anti-racism and anti-oppression work in university contexts, so very relevant to us in our workplace. And, you know, it particularly includes analysis of the ways in which kind of large institutions, in the case of the book, universities, but you could talk about other large institutions as well, how their engagement in diversity work can become performative, or how it can be performative. You know, the issuing of statements of principle and things like this can become performative. And so it talks about the back of the book calls the gap between symbolic commitments to diversity and the experience of those who embody diversity in the institution in question. So it's a mix of analysis of documents and also interviews with equity and diversity officers and equity workers in universities. And so this was really great, particularly for us as folks who work in university and who are trying to do that kind of work, that really tackled a lot of the barriers, the institutional barriers to really doing meaningful anti-oppression work in those contexts. And Sarah Ahmed is one of my absolute favorite feminist authors of all time. I've read lots of her books. She has a new one coming out soon. So I was very glad that we chose this book. And we read it over the course of more than a month and had discussions about it every couple of chapters. With Katie Flower's Blossom Book Club for this month, we read At the Existentialist Cafe by Sarah Bakewell. And this is a book that is about existentialist philosophers. So really a kind of historical and biographical book about Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir and Albert Camus, and this kind of milieu of thinkers that all kind of influenced each other and theorized in conversation with each other in different ways. I have taught some existentialist work, de Beauvoir specifically, in my teaching. It is not my area of specialization or anything like that, but certainly I've read a number of existentialist philosophers before. And I thought that the book was really well done. I thought that it was really approachable, and that it made what can be dense ideas pretty comprehensible. And it really captured the kind of spirit of the time period that existentialists were writing in, and the kind of personalities and the interplay of the personalities and the different lines of influence between their work in ways that I thought were great. And with my friend Corvin of Tail Raven Tarot, folks will know, who has also a book club, we read Conjure Women by Afia Adekora. We don't pick a book every month. We just kind of pick a new book each time we finish the old book. But we happen to finish Conjure Women by Afia Adekora this month, which is a novel, a historical fiction novel that is set, the time period jumps back and forth a bit between just prior to slavery ending and just afterwards. It was a difficult read for reasons that are obvious given the context, but this novel was beautiful. It was so good. Just incredibly written, incredible character development, 5 stars, everything about it. I really enjoyed, and everybody who read it really liked it as well. I actually I don't say I can't believe, because of course I do believe, but it's incredible to me that Conjure Women is the author's debut novel. I feel like it doesn't read like a debut novel. And I can't wait to read more of Afia Adekora. I thought it was amazing. Next up, I have some books that I read in the context of my Druidry study. So for part of the AODA candidate year, one of the things that we do is read books about our local ecology and our environment. And so I read a book called The Natural History of Lake Ontario by Susan P. Gately. And I learned quite a bit about the ecology of Lake Ontario, but I did not like the book. I did not give it a very high rating. I rate all my books on Goodreads. I'll put my Goodreads down there. And I did not really love this book on Lake Ontario because there were no citations in it whatsoever, which, maybe the hard copy is different than the ebook, but there was a bibliography, but there's no citations of anything, which for me, when you're writing a book like this, is very frustrating because I can't follow up on anything that I'm interested in to go read where it came from. No citations are a problem. I also had issue with the ways in which this book, in talking about the history of Lake Ontario, represented Indigenous people by referring to Indigenous people in past tense, and anything that pertained to Indigenous people and their life, around Lake Ontario was taken from really fucking colonial sources like Jesuit missionaries. And this is not good scholarship. So I did not appreciate those things about this book. Lots of interesting information about Lake Ontario, but overall those issues really tanked it for me, I'll be honest. Also related to Druidry study, I'm, as I've mentioned, exploring Ogham, Divination, and so I finished this month Ogham, the Celtic Oracle of the Trees by Paul Rees-Mountfort. This so far is the best Ogham book that I have had. There are many Ogham books, not as many as tarot books, but there are quite a selection in publication to pick from. But I really liked this one. It is well cited. It includes the kennings of the little phrases that represent each Ogham. It includes pronunciation guides. It includes information about the meaning of each one, and then natural characteristics of the tree that it's associated with, storylines, like mythological storylines, folklore, magic, etc. And then some Ogham reading techniques and things like this. So I really liked this as a book for learning Ogham. The Ogham deck that I have, which I got to learn with, its guidebook is not the most substantial, and I knew getting that deck that I would need a book, or like realistically I'm going to want like 5 books to learn with, and this one is the one that I like the best of the ones that I've had. So I was happy to finish that one. I do have another one on the go, so I will review that in a future month. I finished a second Ogham book this month, which was the Celtic Tree Ogham, Rituals and Teachings of the Aikme Alm Vowels and the Forfeda by Sherilyn Hidalgo. This book is forthcoming, so I got an advanced reading copy of this book. And this is not so much a learning Ogham book as it is a ideas for designing your own ritual to celebrate a tree and the meanings associated with it book. I had issues with this book too. I read some fantastic books this month. I read some not so fantastic books this month, and this book unfortunately did not do it for me. It had a very, very binary approach to gender, which I did not appreciate. I also found that this book had some attempts at diversity that for me came off as superficial and as such read as appropriative. And this book also had no citations and no historical basis at all, which, considering that the Ogham as a form of divination has such a long history, I was hoping that there would be more there. And even if it's not going to be a historical book, if you're going to be putting in sentences like, you know, it has been said about the Ogham that, you know, it has been written that, then like tell me where so that I can follow up. Don't give me this nebulous, like, it has been written. It's like, well, by who and where? Just tell me. So, yeah, not my favorite. Next up, I will conclude with the books that went with my TBR cards for the month. The TBR cards by Jessie at Bowties and Books. We will recall that I drew 5 cards. So the first book that I read was to satisfy only one of the prompts, and that was a prompt to read an Own Voices book centering a Muslim family. And so for that, I read Zain Jukadar's book, The 30 Names of Night. I had never really heard of this book before. I came across it, and 5 stars. The 30 Names of Night was a beautiful book. It follows a pretty young trans man who is Syrian American and living in New York City, in like contemporary New York City. And then it also follows kind of an alternate, in alternate chapters follows Layla Z, who's a Syrian American artist who had disappeared years before the main storyline, or what I think of as the main storyline anyway. And it's a kind of epistolary, second person. The main protagonist is addressing his mother, who we know from the beginning of the book has passed away. And it covers so many themes in this book. It tackles, internalized and not internalized transphobia and homophobia and family and xenophobia and Islamophobia and immigration and grief and struggles with, familial religion and just so much. I can't really say much about the plot of the book without giving things away. And really, it's a character-driven book anyway. But The 30 Names of Night by Zane Jukadar was amazing, and people should read it. For the second one, the second book that I picked, I chose to have for science fiction with a Black protagonist and also a book over 500 pages long. As soon as I got the over 500 pages long, I knew that I would be doubling up. So there it is. These two. And I read Master of Poisons by Andrea Hairston, which was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's an epic fantasy. So actually it did not really satisfy this. I would not say that it is science fiction. I picked it because other people had put it on the science fiction shelf on Goodreads. It's not science fiction, it's fantasy. With some different African folklore and religious ideas there as a kind of influence in the fantasy setting. It is very diverse in terms of gender and sexuality, and it has a plot that involves a kind of interesting take on environmental crisis, which I appreciated. The world building was amazing. I did find the pace a bit inconsistent. Like at times there was action that was moving so quickly that I didn't quite know what was happening, and at other times it was good and smooth and consistent. But overall, Master of Poisons was great, and I would recommend it. I don't know if this is one that will have a sequel or another book in the same world, but the world building was great, so I would happily read another book in that setting, no question. I would happily read another one of Andrea Hairston's books. I thought it was good. So I also read science fiction with a Black protagonist again because that one didn't really fit. So I read Far From the Light of Heaven by Tade Thompson. This is not out yet. I got an advanced reader copy. And this one I gave 5 stars. I had read some other of Tade Thompson before. He has a trilogy. The first book in the trilogy is Rosewater, which I had read before. And I had given that one 4 stars, and I liked Far From the Light of Heaven better. So I gave it 5. And Far From the Light of Heaven is a locked room murder mystery on a spaceship. And it is science fictional in that it is A, in space, and B, involves some technology that does not exist in the way that it's depicted in the book. Like there's an android character, for example. But it doesn't include, and Tade Thompson has a section, I can't remember now if it's at the beginning or the end of the book, where he talks about this. It doesn't include a lot of things that are common in science fiction. Like there's no faster than light travel. There's no, teleporters or any of this kind of stuff. It's really not that kind of techie science fiction. And it really is at its heart a murder mystery. The not intergalactic, within the solar system, politics are really interesting in this book and well drawn and believable in a lot of ways. It is a multi-point of view book, which I thought was really well handled. I know that this book is a standalone, but I would love it if Tade Thompson revisited this universe because I thought that it was really well done. So that was a favorite for sure. And then the last 2 TBR cards I got were one that starts with L, starts with the first letter of your name, and Lost in Translation, a book translated from another language. So I knew with the 500 page, I was like, how am I going to fit all these things in? So I went for something that I knew would not take too long for me to read. And for a book that starts with L that is translated, I chose The Land of Stone Flowers, A Fairy Guide to the Mythical Human Being by Sveta Dorosheva. And this is translated from, I believe, Russian. It was published in Russia first. And so the idea of this book is that it's a collection of observations written by different fairy characters who have had encounters with humans and are trying to explain humans to the rest of the fairies, some of whom don't believe that humans are actually real. And so this was a fun one. I mean, I found the content, some of the content a lot more interesting than other parts of the content, but the illustrations in this book are amazing. And it's really this kind of old fairy tale feeling to the illustrations. And I think that the illustrations are worth, make it worth a look alone. And the way that the texts are integrated into the illustrations is really cool. There's a lot of interesting pictures in here. It was a quick read. There were parts of it that were really funny. I said when I reviewed this book, I said I would give more stars for the pictures than for the text. But I enjoyed it overall. That's all the books. 10 of them. Done. Now, I have decided for this month, for the first time, since I've had them, I've decided that this time I am not going to pick new TBR cards for October. And I'm not doing it for two reasons. One is that my book stack of joy, the little pile of unread books, has accumulated. It's not huge, but there's enough there that I really want to prioritize just reading some of the books that I have in the pile. The other reason is that for October, I really like to read horror and read creepy, spooky books for October. And I have some already picked out. And so rather than drawing a bunch of cards and getting random genres, I would like to basically read the spooky or creepy books that have been on my list that I haven't gotten around to yet as my reading for October. So my end of October video will include some horror books. I've already picked out books by Tananarive Due and Stephen Graham Jones and Lee Mandello, Summer Suns I'm going to read with the Artisan Geeks book club. And I have some other ones. I know I have a creepy Jeff Vandermeer book on my list. I don't think it's really horror, but it would fit. I have some books picked out anyway, so that's what I'll be talking about at the end of October. Animal of the month. My animal of the month this month is a crab, and this is from the Fauna Inspiration Oracle deck, which is by Rebecca Lefebvre and Phoebe Hunt. And so this is a deck that has the crab and then has the write-up on the back. I really love the artwork. I struggle with the write-ups, but I decided to just, explore crab in my own way and learn some things about crabs. Crabs are very diverse, so it was, in some ways hard to come up with kind of a meaning because there's so much variance in like crab diet and the way that crabs move and the way that they behave and all the rest of it. There's very much variance, particularly when you incorporate animals that are referred to as crabs but are not actually crabs. So lots to learn about. But crabs, as a rule, have thick exoskeletons that protect their squishy middle. And I feel like it has been a month where I have been looking at this card, and I have this card in my bedroom, where I can see it every day on my little magical space. And I feel like I've been, reminding myself of crab in a kind of self-protective way, in a shielding way, as with, going back to work and going back to the campus and that, feeling, in some ways like I need some, physical safety, and also, energetically feeling more vulnerable, I suppose, for those reasons. And so crab has been nice to accompany me in that way. I will also note, as an aside, getting crab, I of course thought of Cancer, but I don't actually have any planets in Cancer in my chart. So Cancer is in my 8th house, though. So I did read a little bit about that. I've been thinking about crab as a inspiration to kind of put the tools that I have to use in perhaps ways that are unexpected or not the first thought, thinking about how they walk sideways and move in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect. But my favorite thing that I learned about crabs that I didn't know was how cooperative crabs are, and how kind of communal their dynamics are. Granted, like, crab is not an animal that I've had the opportunity to observe at length, so I didn't know this, but crabs are very, very cooperative. And so I thought I would share this. I showed this book in my book tag video for having a busted up spine and having been read a lot of times and shared around. Pyotr Kropotkin, Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution. Kropotkin was an anarchist philosopher, geographer, biologist, cartographer, scientist. And in this book, he's writing about cooperation amongst many different species. And he has this little section on the crab that I really, really like. And so I'll just read this little piece. And I've kind of read this a couple of times over the course of the month, taking inspiration from crab. And this is what he says. As to the big Maluka crab, Limulus, I was struck in 1882 at the Brighton Aquarium with the extent of mutual assistance which these clumsy animals are capable of bestowing upon a comrade in case of need. One of them had fallen upon its back in a corner of the tank, and its heavy saucepan-like carapace prevented it from returning to its natural position, the more so as there was in the corner an iron bar which rendered the task still more difficult. Its comrades came to the rescue, and for 1 hour's time I watched how they endeavored to help their fellow prisoner. They came to at once, pushed their friend from beneath, and after strenuous efforts succeeded in lifting it upright, but then the iron bar would prevent them from achieving the work of rescue, and the crab would again heavily fall upon its back. After many attempts, one of the helpers would go into the depths of the tank and bring 2 other crabs, which would then begin with fresh forces the same pushing and lifting of their helpless comrade. We stayed in the aquarium for more than 2 hours, and when leaving, we again came to cast a glance upon the tank. The work of rescue still continued. Since I saw that, I cannot refuse credit to the observation quoted by Dr. Erasmus Darwin, namely, that the common crab during the molting season stations as sentinel an unmolted or hard-shelled individual to prevent marine enemies from injuring molted individuals in their unprotected state. So this amazing story of watching crabs try to rescue one of their crab friends, and the learning that when crabs shed their hard shells, which is actually what the back of this card talks about, as crab grows, she casts off her shell, that other crabs who haven't cast off their shell stand around to protect those more vulnerable crabs. So how amazing is that, to think about solidarity and comradeship, as well as self-protectiveness from the crab. I loved that. So I will finish this video, which has become much longer than intended, by picking a animal card again for October. And I want to pick from Jessie Jumanji's Flora and Fauna of Africa Oracle deck, which since Afro Tarot 2 showed up a couple of days ago, I've had this deck out as well, this beautiful deck. So I have taken out the few that I've already drawn this year to pick somebody new for an animal card for October, who I can learn about and learn from. This feels good. Ooh, shark. And the message from shark here is move in silence. Approach challenges and opportunities with vigor. Hone your senses and be alert. And the flora, to go with the fauna, is the Venus flytrap, which says preparation. So for October, I will be learning about the shark. That's it for my September recap, which has gone on even longer than usual. Thank you so much for watching. I wish everybody a wonderful last couple days of the month and a happy October, and I will see you all again soon.